Uh-huh. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll table it. I will attempt to get it onto YouTube so that anybody that wants to see it can see it. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to keep this as brief as possible because it may not be a brief conversation, but I don't want to waste your time or belabor the point. Welcome, everybody. This is most people I've had on a call in a while, and I'm really pleased and honored that you show up and be part of this. All of you have received an email or should have received an email that said, sign this addendum. The addendum is basically the changes that are taking place in the MLS and the fines that are going to be imposed if you don't comply with the changes. And I want everybody to acknowledge that they're aware of those things for your own benefit. And that's why I created the document, sent it out, and everybody should sign it. I would prefer if you would e-sign it, send it through your e-sign system and send it back to us as a 5-page PDF. So that we can record the fact that you have signed it. And we are keeping track of everybody that's doing it. If you haven't signed, at some point, we're going to call you up and say, do you want to participate? Because this is such a critical issue, although it's not a big change. Let me start that at the beginning. It's not a big change, and it does have some good benefit, okay, because it's going to give you an opportunity to talk to your buyer customers and to explain to them the value that you're presenting, so that they know more about you and more about what we do, which will be good, and they're going to be more apt to spend time with you rather than just have you show one house and go off. And I think it's incumbent upon buyers, and there are some buyers that think that they're smarter and that they don't need an agent and that they'll just use you to show the property. And then if they don't want the property, they'll go use some other agent to show the property. And that's not going to work for them so much because they're going to have to sign an agreement every time. Now, there is just a showing agreement, and that's one of the things that you can use. So, that is something that can happen. Now, I'm in form simplicity. You guys that are here in the audience can see that. And you folks at home, I guess you can see my screen as well, right? You can see that I'm in form simplicity. I'm in the blank forms tab. Okay, let me get started over here so that you can see. So starting from home, I'm going to the blanks forms tab, which is at the top. Okay, and then I'm going to show you forms packages. And I have now 3 forms packages, but one of them is probably kind of redundant, so probably don't need it. I have the listing docs, which we've always had. And to get to those docs, if you wanted to download listing docs or you want to download buyer docs or NAR docs into a transaction, you just go over here to the transaction. And when you're in a transaction, this is the buyer consultation transaction that I had out there. Okay, under add a forms package, you'll have access to those forms packages right there. And these are broker-wide packages, not personal packages. So you'll see them. Okay. If for some reason you don't see them, let me know. You can, your form simplicity may not be updated. Okay. This should be the same for all the folks in Melbourne, all the folks here. Okay. Should be exactly the same because it's the same MLS. It's the real MLS. Neat the way they've connected all that stuff. So now you see Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Daytona, and Space Coast, which is Melbourne. And you guys here in Jacksonville can see all of that on your MLS. So you have like over 20,000 listings that are available all the way down the coast. If you need to go farther, we're also a member of Beaches. We're a member of Miami. We're a member of Key West, Keys. And we're a member of Stellar, which covers, we get there through Gainesville and that covers half the state of Florida. So regardless of whether you want to buy or sell real estate, if you need to be a member of that board or get something done in that board, we're there for majority of the population. We cover all the major centers. The only thing that we really don't cover of any reasonable consequence is the panhandle. But we've got most of the rest of it because Stellar covers a huge amount all the way from, I guess, Naples and down that way, Tampa, Orlando, all the way over to Palm Coast. Goes right to the beach. So it covers all the center of the state. And then the other boards cover almost everything down the East Coast. I think we may have a hole around West Palm, and we've got a hole at Fernandina because Fernandina board is obnoxious. They don't want us to be up. They don't want any of y'all up there. So anything that you can sell in Fernandina, it pays a bonus. No, I'm just kidding. All right, but that's how you get to the docks. Okay, but what I'm going to do is we can use this. Yeah, we can use this right. So it was just brought to my attention today. We'll start right there. Brought to my attention today that there is a new compensation disclosure statement, CDS 5. This is the CDS 5, and Casey brought this to my attention. And so, I've got 27 people, 37 people. We've got almost half the company. Okay, this disclosure document is to be used for anybody that has an existing listing or buyer broker agreement that was created prior to August 17th. Okay, so if you've got a listing and it's 180 days old and it hasn't sold yet, you need to send this disclosure. It does not require a signature. It just requires you to acknowledge that it was how you delivered it. And if you're sending it by email, you maybe want to take a copy of the email and a copy of the attachment and put it in paperless pipeline, or send it to Carrie so she can put it in paperless pipeline for your transaction to record the fact that you did provide this. And what this says, that notice to buyer and seller and owner, broker compensation is not set by law and is fully negotiable. That's the whole purpose of this form. Okay, they don't have to sign it, but you're going to attest with the information at the bottom that it was delivered by personal delivery or whatever. So,
hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Okay, so that statement is on the Florida Realtors listing agreement now.
Right, right. And it's on every agreement that Florida Realtors is now having you sign. The purpose is for listing agreements that were done on the old NAR listing agreement before these documents have all changed out. Okay, if you've got any kind of a listing or a contract that was done 30, 60, 90 days ago, it may not include that message. That's what this is for. So
well, you had said prior to August 17th, so I just wanted to make sure that...
Well, that's because people may have listed something on an older document prior to August 17th.
Gotcha.
Okay. And when I say prior to August 17th, that includes history back to George Washington, just in case. Okay. So if you have a customer transaction that's going on or is recently completed or anything like that, you may want to provide them with a copy of this document and document that you did so. Okay. That's number one. All right. Who has already signed the addendum? Okay. The rest of you all, if you can get to it as soon as possible, it would help. And that is simply so that I know who's gotten the message about this, make sure that everybody's on board with it. And, probably after, well, probably tomorrow, maybe tomorrow afternoon, I'm gonna start calling people that have not sent in the signed document to see where they're at and, if they're gonna be willing to sign that document, because that could be critical. I don't want them to get fined. I don't want to be fined. And on some of these fines, they've said, we're not only gonna fine the agent, we're gonna fine the broker. And that's just a waste of money. And then they give it to charity or something. I don't know. Okay, so, these are the documents that are new to the system for this purpose. One of the things that I probably want to look at before I look at these documents with you is the actual listing, the listing agreement. I think I've got one out here. Residential contract. Purchasing. Well, let me add one. Let me say it. Who's right, sale, bar, not guessing. So I had. Bear with me. Trying to affirm.
That's the transition.
That's the transition. Gosh, help. Who let that one?
Big fly. I don't know, he's huge, it's a horse fly.
There's a baby visiting.
Oh, that was in my house last night. I mean, all the furniture could not find.
It's ERS 19, ERS-19 TB.
ERS-20. Who's the right of sale listing agreement, transaction broker?
Yeah.
This looks right.
That's a new one.
Does it look right? Look right to you? Okay. Yeah, the transaction. Okay. Now, the only reason I wanted to show you this was to show you that on this document, it does take note of this is compensation section 7A, and it has in here the dollars or percentage for purchase, and you want to use the percentage plus this section right here. You would use like 6% plus $350. And when you go down here to what am I doing wrong? Compensation, broker's compensation. This is the wrong document, this one.
It's in the Florida, I thought it was in the Florida, Link Forms Library.
I thought that's where I was.
And then you put the, you.
It should be section 10. You're looking for section 10 of that.
You just put in compensation and it pulled up. If you just put in the search bar, compensation.
That should have been the document, but it should be section 10, is what you're looking for, I think.
Right. Or section 8,
Yeah.
section 8, it goes
Now,
over compensation.
This is a listing.
Right, that was section 8 you're just looking at, right?
It was section 7, and then I thought it was supposed to be section 8.
Isn't that buyer?
Go to section
Wait a minute,
eight.
here we go, section 8.
That's right.
The section 10 is, I think, was the part you were wanting to see, right there. right there.
Compensation to the
All
fire.
right, here we are.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what you're looking for.
Appreciate it. Navigation help. Okay. So, you'll note here that there are two different kinds of compensation. Okay, and this, and it's subtle, but this says offer compensation, the broker to offer compensation to the buyer's broker. And this one says seller authorizes the broker to offer compensation to buyer's broker from the seller. This one's from the broker. Any place where the broker is dark like this, it's talking about us, the broker, listing the property. Okay, but this is from the seller. And I don't know why they're drawing that fine line distance. This was done by attorneys. I want you to note that in this listing agreement, that statement is also here. Broker commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. Okay, but so those two, the differentiation between A and B, and of course, it says if neither are checked, C is deemed to be elected, that there is no compensation being paid. Okay, so you're going to want to, when you're listing a property, you're going to want to make sure that the seller is willing as much as possible to pay compensation to the buyer's broker, usually through us as the broker. Okay, so you want to use A as much as possible. I'm not sure in what circumstances B would be elected. If the seller wants to negotiate with the buyer's side, that may be the case, or maybe the buyer's side is not going to ask for a full 3%. Maybe the seller wants to negotiate directly with them, and that's possible too. Okay, but as much as possible when you're doing this, you want to make sure that the seller's willing to offer an incentive, because if it's just me as an agent selling a property and I'm listing the property, I'm only going to sell it to the buyers that actually reach out to me directly. And without the help of all the other agents out there, we're not going to have the strength that we have with those other agents. So we need to offer incentive for those agents to do business with us. And the incentive, part of the incentive is advertising the house and getting their customer interested in it, where their customer will drag them back to the transaction. But the other part of it is actually offering it an incentive compensation. And that's how life works. That's how business works. So it doesn't really change anything to what we were doing 6 months ago, because we were charging, a negotiated commission at, maybe it was 5%, maybe it was 6%. And then we were paying from the brokerage. Basically, it was paid at closing, but we were paying that other percentage to the other agent. So it's no different now. It's just that we have to make sure that we outline it. And I wanted to show you in the listing agreement, so that then these other documents in this section would make sense. Okay, now all of these, when you go to blank forms, and all of these are in the forms package. Okay, so and you can see that there's buyer docs right here. All of them are in the forms package. I took care of that earlier this week. So now we're going to go to those individual documents. But the main thing that I wanted to cover with you is, how does it change your process? Okay, so here's the compensation agreements. This is exclusive buyer broker agreement, transaction broker. I think most of you are familiar with that. We've talked about it ad nauseum as a result of this. What I want to cover today are the newer forms. But does anybody have any questions about the buyer broker agreement?
Okay, so when you're explaining this to a buyer, I'm a little conflicted. So when you tell them, okay, you might be responsible, or you would be responsible for my compensation if, a house that you choose, the seller isn't willing to provide compensation and you truly want to move forward with it. Is that how you say it?
No, well, yeah, you could. I think the main thing that I would cover on it is, I can't go show you a house unless you sign.
Well, that part first. Yeah, that part first.
And this is not required by law, but it's required by NAR policy. In other words, all these changes are not laws. They're not regulations. They're not something that somebody has gone to a legislature and created. These are policies that are set out by NAR that NAR has enforced with the MLS to enforce us to do it. So if we want to participate in the MLS, we're forced to do this. Okay?
And then say you're on the road and then they want to see an additional house that all of a sudden someone can.
No, that's okay.
I just have the blank forms on me for the buyer broker agreement to add an additional.
You don't have to add a house.
Okay,
Okay, if you get a buyer broker agreement signed, you're gonna get it signed. You can make it as broad as any time in the next year, any place in the state of Florida,
gotcha.
without restriction. Okay, and then you're their agent for a year for the state of Florida. And if they go to an agent in Tampa and they buy a house 6 months from now, they still owe you the commission regardless of whether they did something wrong.
How will I know
How will you know?
that they bought a Tampa?
Hopefully they'll tell you.
Well, that's.
If you don't keep track of your customers, that's on you.
Mhm.
So what about the showing agreement?
Okay, well, and we'll get to that. I just want to cover the buyer broker agreement first, if there's anybody else that has any other questions. And it does change how you present, right? So you may want to talk about what services you're going to provide,
Okay,
you know, and you may want to talk about what's important to the buyer about working with an agent on a continuous basis until they get into the house, because in order for an agent to be able to help them, the agent has to know what they want, has to be able to produce searches, to drill into the properties that they want. And the more that you know as an agent about what they want, the better you're going to be able to serve them and get them what they want. And if you just go off and you get one agent to see one property and one agent to see another property, you're not going to get that depth of understanding that agent has from working with you.
and you're just gonna go through the same process, the hamster wheel of them telling you have to pay them and be exclusive with them. It's just
Right.
It's gonna be the same
Right.
answer.
So it's best for the buyer to get established with an agent. And imagine you were, you had a lawsuit. And you imagine every time something came up with that lawsuit, you called a different attorney. Or let's say you got sick and you had cancer, and every time you went to the doctor, you went to a different doctor. We're professionals just like they, okay? So that's why the buyer, that's why you, the buyer, would want to do business with me, the agent, on a continuous basis. So you don't have to retrain me every time you call up.
Yeah.
And you're gonna get better service from somebody that you have a working relationship with than somebody that you just call up out of the blue. Sure.
If, when you're putting in the percentage that they would need to pay you if, you know, in case a seller is not willing to pay. Now, if it's a new construction home and a builder, how do you not cut yourself off at the leg if you said 3%, but then they're
We should
paying?
get through some of the presentation
Okay.
because a lot of that's gonna get covered.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because I'm gonna explain to you what those forms do. Well, right now, any other questions about the buyer broker agreement? The buyer broker agreement does say that anything that you receive from the seller or the seller's broker offsets what the buyer owes you. So if you get 2% from the other source and the buyer's broker agreement was 3%, then they would still have an obligation to pay you 1%. Okay, and when you write a contract, if they're not offering compensation, that's going to determine how you write the contract. So here's where your process is going to change from the buyer broker agreement or from the showing. When you make an appointment to see the property, you're going to see the agent and the agent's phone number. Shoot them a text and ask them if they're offering compensation on the property address. Okay. And you want to establish that up front even before you show it. And the reason that you want to establish that is because it may affect how you make an offer or if you make an offer. If you're working with a first-time home buyer, they got to have some kind of compensation from the seller or some kind of closing costs or whatever. if they're not offering any compensation and they're not gonna be willing to offer any closing costs, it may not even be worth your time to go see that particular property. I don't know. I would, probably err on the side of, yeah, let's go show the property, but I want to know what the compensation is. Then when you write the offer, if you know that they're offering 2%, then you can ask them for a seller's concession for an additional 1% to cover the, for the buyer. And you put on there to cover closing costs, buyer broker commissions, et cetera. And then that way, their extra 1% is covered for you as well by the seller. Okay, but it's done, that would be done on the contract, but you would not put on a contract that, that the seller is going to pay 1% for commissions to C21 Lighthouse Realty. Okay, and if the seller accepts that agreement, then you would get the seller's compensation, the buyer's broker signed. Even though it wasn't signed on the listing agreement, you would get that signed for the additional 1%. So you're getting 2% from the broker to buyer's broker agreement, and you have that agreement signed. But you only need those agreements if you're actually making an offer. Okay, prior to showing, you want to find out what the compensation is. Okay, and so then you go show the property, and then the buyer decides they want to make an offer on the property. Then you're going to get the compensation agreements signed with either the buyer's agent or the seller's agent, the listing agent, or you're going to get it signed with the seller directly, depending on how the compensation was worded in the listing agreement, because they should tell you when you ask about compensation, is it coming from the seller, or is it coming from the seller broker?
And of course, how much.
And of course, how much? Very, very good, very good. Okay.
Jeff, this is Aura. I have a question.
Sure.
So hi. I put a house under contract like 2 weeks ago, and I made him sign the buyer brokerage agreement to my buyer. And I put 2.5% on that agreement. And the house that we put under contract, they're offering 3%. It's obviously on the MLS, it's showing on the MLS and everything. So in that case, the agreement isn't at 2.5, but I'm getting 3%. Do I
Well,
have?
you're getting 2.5 until you do something about it. You're not allowed to accept any more than 2.5.
Okay, so do I
Now-
have to change that?
Now, in before August the 18th, you can accept the rest of it. Or before August 17th. All right,
Yeah.
here's what you should do. Okay, there is a modification to the exclusive buyer broker agreement, and this is one of the forms we're going to go over, so this is a good time to go over it.
Okay,
Okay, when you pull up this modification, it gives you compensation to the broker will be, and it gives you the ability to restate the compensation. Okay, and so that's what I would do. I would fill out this form, and this would be signed by the buyer and by you as the authorized associate.
okay. And then
Okay.
the other,
And that would amend the buyer broker agreement to the amounts that you have now. Now,
Okay.
it's incumbent on everybody before they go in and sign the contract with the builder for the 5% commission. You sign that you make the modification to the agreement prior to that contract. Okay, because if you make the modification to the agreement after the contract, you're just
Illegal.
you're gaming the system.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that would stand up in a court of law, but, and you may even want to put the time on the form as well as the date, so that when you go and they sign the contract for the actual purchase, then you can legally accept that 5% and you haven't violated NAR policy of only being able to accept what's on your buyer broker agreement. Because you've now amended the buyer broker agreement prior to walking in and making that offer.
no, Jeff,
Yes.
if we do it the other way around and they offering me, the seller is offering buyer's agent 2%, and I have on the buyer brokerage agreement, I have my buyer sign for 3%, but then at the end, I want to just charge him that 2% or like take the 2% from the seller, not the 3% from my buyer. Do I have to still modify it or can we just leave it like that? It will be a 1% that I won't be taking because I don't want to take it from, the other 1% from my buyer. So can I just leave it like that as a 3%, but taking 2% from the seller and don't fill out the modification? Or do I
Well-
still have to make the modification for the 2%?
There is an issue there, and, when you reduce the amount you accept below the contractual amount, you're discounting your commissions. You're also, I guess, discounting my commission.
Yes, but I just kind of wanna, because if I
And
had
you're
that.
asking me to admit in front of all these witnesses.
No, but in the case that the buyer doesn't have.
And so
any
when
money-
I can't pay my rent there.
Well, in the case that happens, because the buyers, if they don't have, closing costs and down payment and the seller is offering me the 2% and that's the house they love and, and then they just don't have that 1% difference. Okay, I know it's, we don't want to discount our commission, but in case we do I still have to make the modification?
I would think probably, yes. What do you think, Jason?
Well, it's
Yes,
the seller that's
absolutely.
paying the commission.
Hang on, Fred. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, it needs to be modified. If there's gonna be a difference, you don't want to have variable income in there. So make the modification, have them sign a new agreement or maybe an amendment.
Okay,
And you could always ask the seller to pay the difference. You could ask them to pay that extra
yeah,
0.5%.
Certainly, certainly.
Well, and my thing would be, and that's why you ask for compensation in front, so that you can actually put it in the offer as a concession to the buyer.
okay,
Not that, but as long as the buyer gets the money, then they will have the concession to pay you at closing. Okay, so you wouldn't have to discount it. Does that make sense?
yes.
So
Thank
you
you.
get from the buyer's broker, you're getting an offer that says that you're getting 2%. You've got a buyer broker agreement that says 3%. Okay, so you put in the other terms and conditions that you're asking as part of the offer to purchase the house. You're asking for a concession from the seller for
1%.
well, for 1% or more than 1% for closing costs and this and that and the other. And the understanding is that some of that is going to go from the buyer towards your, when you're writing the offer, you're telling the buyer that some of that concession is going to go towards paying the difference in your fee.
A seller contribution of closing costs. Jeff, you got, Haley's got a question in the chat.
Okay, what does it say, Fred?
So what if the seller signed brokerage with another agent before and now wants to list the property? What it says, should I worry, but, maybe it's more clear. She put it in twice, so you can always speak to it, I guess.
Well, you have to understand that I have limited availability here. Chat. Let me see what it says. Got a bunch of-
It says, what if a seller has signed brokerage with another agent before, now wants to list the property, I'm assuming with her, that they would have to cancel that other agreement with the other brokerage, correct?
That's what if the listing's older than 180 days? I don't care how old the listing is, you still need to disclose that use that disclosure form that all commissions are negotiable. So just e-sign and upload the amendment to form simplicity. E-sign, upload the amendment, email it to Nancy or email it to me. We're keeping track. Look at the NAR website, explain the difference. Okay, thank you. NAR is offering it at no cost till the end of the year. ABR designation normally costs $295. In the buyer broker agreement, you can stipulate a cancellation fee and other fees. That is true. What is the seller has signed brokerage with some other agent before, now wants to list property, what should I worry? Well, now, a listing agreement is different. If they have a listing agreement that's in force with another broker for that party, and you know about it, that listing agreement has to be canceled before you can list it in the MLS. If you get a listing agreement signed, and I've fought this battle before, and the MLS will not support you. If you sign a listing agreement with a customer for a property that's under a current listing agreement someplace else, the MLS is not going to take sides. They're going to say you're both wrong. Okay? Because they don't know whether the buyer fired this guy or the seller fired this guy, hired you, or you just swooped in and they signed a separate listing agreement with you. They don't know what's what, and they're not going to fight that battle. They're just going to tell you, if you have your listing out there and the other agent has their listing out there, they're going to just say you're both wrong. You're both going to get a violation. If you don't fix it, then they will eventually fine you, I guess. But they're big on.
What if the seller lies? What if the seller lies?
Well, the seller may not understand contracts. The seller may not understand that they're still under a listing agreement with another agent. But when you find out about it, you probably want to talk to that agent. Now, the agent can't hold the property hostage to collect liquidated damages, and a lot of agents will do that. And many times they'll put it in withdrawn status. But one of the things that you'll see is when you go to list the property, if the system will tell you if that property is already listed. Right?
Okay, I have a specific case. This customer, she wants to list one of her property in St. Augustine. She said she listed it in April and for 400 and could not sell. So she want to list with me now. And the thing is that I searched through MLS online and even with Zillow or whatever, I do not see that particular listing showed up.
Well, if you know who it was listed with, or you can ask the customer who did they have it listed with before, call them up and make sure that it's canceled. And we're off topic, so we really need to get back to the topic or we'll never get done.
Just let her know something's going on with the system. It's the same thing happening with a few expireds I've been trying to reach out to. All of a sudden, they're not in the system anymore. She should call the MLS.
Okay, that could be. But that would be the general rule. You want to be above board about it, and the best thing to do is talk to the other agent, find out where they are. If they've got it in withdrawn status and they're holding it as hostage until they collect liquidated damages, they're really not supposed to do that. But unfortunately, they may be doing that. And I always tell an agent, if they have a copy of the listing agreement, get a copy of the prior listing agreement from the customer so they can see, number one, when it expires, number two, how much liquidated damages the customer is being exposed to if it's still in force, and so that they can talk intelligently with the customer about a prior listing. Does that make sense?
Well, all this based on the fact we know who is the prior listing agent. But
Well, ask your customer.
what if she lies?
What if she lies? Well, then
You don't want her.
the agent. When you talk to the agent, they'll tell you they were not the agent.
Okay.
Yeah, that's I understand it's a little sticky, but that is what it is. Okay, so, this is the modification of the buyer broker agreement. And it's good that y'all brought that up so that we could showcase the particular form. You wouldn't, now, a buyer broker agreement and the compensation agreements are what? Yeah, but what are they?
Contracts.
They're contracts.
Mhm.
What happens after you have an executed contract? Well, yeah, but you don't go back to that contract a week later and mark it up or change it. You use an amendment. Okay, and so that's why they have these documents out there. So you don't screw with your buyer or broker agreement because you could void the contract and go scribbling on it. You just keep that like it is. You come and use the modification form. Jump in anytime, Jason.
I'm with you. Go ahead.
All right, good. So then there's also, in addition to the buyer broker agreement, there's a simple little showing agreement. This is a showing agreement. If customer's not willing to sign a buyer broker agreement, you can have them sign the showing agreement that says you can do this for a week, you can do it for a month. It's from this time to this time, or from this date to this date. The consumer wants the professional services of.
There's also a new form too, Jeff.
All
Called
right,
PPTA-1. It is a property pre-touring agreement. And it actually goes in through a little bit more detail. It says you'll have to enter in a separate agreement. Also, I don't know if that one does that or not. This is a new form that's also just came out
okay.
last
All
month.
right, well, I'm gonna go with what I got right now, because this is gonna get protracted if we don't.
For redundancy, would you think maybe using that and the buyer broker agreement?
Well, no, you're gonna use this if you're not using the buyer broker agreement. If you got and this would, perfect example would be if you got a Zillow customer that calls you up and they want to see one house, you use this, go show them the house, and you have every right to show them the house. Oh, and there was something, and I hope you all saw it in the middle of all that stuff that I sent in the amendment. There was a paragraph about open houses. You can have open houses and talk to the customer about those houses without a buyer broker agreement. Okay, because that was a question.
You just can't advise them.
Well, you can't move them toward a contract without getting a buyer broker agreement signed first, or a showing agreement or something. If the showing agreement, you can go and show them. I think at that point, if they decide to make an offer, you want a buyer broker agreement with them. That makes sense?
I have a question.
Yes.
In the second part, it says the property. If do I need to fill out this showing agreement for every property that I show, or there are 7 lines that am I going to include 7 showings? If I have 10, do I need to fill out another form? How is it?
Continue.
That property touring agreement is set for a set number of days. It would be a lot simpler.
Well, and this is set
Yeah.
for a set number of days too.
But that also specifies which properties.
Yeah.
When you
This
say
one does not.
located in Florida?
This one just says, this, so.
And I'm sure that they're gonna layer in document after document after document. Some of these documents are gonna be obsolete because they don't know what they're doing.
But for this,
I want to get through the process.
but for the sake of this, number 2, and you say you have 6 showings, different properties to the
Three
same
property tours.
buyer, couldn't you put properties located in Florida, and then that kind of everything falls underneath?
I would think that you could, but I would prefer that you do that on a buyer broker agreement. This showing agreement is for, just to go show anybody. No brokerage agreement. We're just gonna go show you a property,
Just a house.
just a house.
Okay.
Okay, it doesn't say that you're gonna buy, and it has obligations down here. You can read through the obligations. But, and there is a section for compensation here. This is not a short agreement either. It's 2 pages.
Right.
So, now, I like your idea. They have a stack of them where you pre-printed C21 Lighthouse Realty or whoever on it and you go from there. Okay, and this really covers a lot of the same things that the buyer broker agreement does. So, I mean, my preference would be to use a buyer broker agreement and keep it as open-ended as possible. You know, when you're talking about the area that you're going to sell them property in, the whole state of Florida, because you're licensed to sell property in the whole state of Florida. That way they don't run off, you know, run off and find another agent just because they're going to St. Augustine. The last thing in the world you want is your customer to call you up on a Monday morning and say, guess what? I bought a house over the weekend. And you weren't there.
Well, I was in the Newfork class and the teacher there said about the buyer broker agreement that at an open house, you have to ask the buyer to let them know the name of their realtor so you can send them information on the property. And if they say no, that you need to have them sign the showing agreement at the open house. Those are the notes I took from the class a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were just saying they can still see the house even if they didn't sign it at the open house, the people coming in.
They can.
Yeah.
They can.
Okay, she was saying no.
Well, obviously.
Unless
she
they
didn't-
sign your showing.
Obviously,
agreement.
she didn't read what came from the MLS
Okay.
as to exactly how that works.
Okay.
In your who's got one of those documents? Would you find that that particular paragraph that talks about open houses in there? But this is what came from actually came from Space Coast, but it's the real MLS, so it's the same here and there.
So you still would want them if they said no to sign that showing
If they
agreement?
said, how do I make an offer on this house? Buyer broker agreement, contract.
I was in,
If they say I have a realtor, but can't prove they have the agreement with that realtor, you can still do it, right?
Well, no, if they have a realtor, have you signed an agreement with your realtor?
Yeah, and they say no.
Haven't signed an agreement, then you don't have a realtor. I can help. If they lie to you, that's on them though. They're the ones gonna have to pay the commission twice. If the other realtor sues them for the commission, that's on them. If they lie to you, then they say, don't lie to me, because if you do, you may be obligated to pay them a commission and they may sue you for it. Okay, as far as the process is concerned, okay, you will have to have either a buyer broker agreement or a showing agreement to show the property. Don't violate that. That's where they're going to find you. Okay, when you go to show a property, you want to contact, if you're showing 5 properties today, send out 5 text messages or make 5 phone calls, however you want to do it, and request any compensation information for each individual property. Okay, text messages might be good because it would be easy to document, you know, and it'd be easy for them to respond. Okay, now you go show the property. All right, and Casey, correct me when I go off the rail. But after you've shown the property, if they say they want to make an offer, the first thing that you do is get a compensation agreement signed with either the seller or the seller's broker. Okay, there are those two, and I showed you that on the listing agreement, you know, how they're going to offer that. If you're looking at a for sale by owner, it would be the seller offering compensation, right? You're going to get that signed.
And when you send them your e-sign, your first page on there is your buyer broker agreement when they're wanting. Like if you go show somebody a property and they're like, I want this property, I want to put an offer on it now. Send them the e-sign, the first page is the buyer broker agreement. They've got to fill that out in e-sign to get to the contract. Would that work? I mean, because we're talking people do move fast. I have sold the first house I've shown.
Yeah, well, no, I understand that, but yeah, you could do that. You could, well, no, you can't do that because they go to different places. The e-sign's going to the buyer with the contract.
No, I'm
You're
talking about
making an agreement
you're
with-
making your listing, when you're making your contract out to send to your buyer. And you're sending that to your buyer for them
Right.
to set it up.
They're not the ones that have to sign. The listing broker has to sign.
no, he's just about the exclusive buyer.
Buyer
broker
broker
agreement.
agreement. You're sending your customer, your buyer, their
Have to show them
contracts.
The
Well,
showing
you
agreement.
already showed them the house with.
You
your
get, no,
listing-
you're
with your
wrong.
listing
You got
documents.
fined. That's fine, right?
You already showed him your house with your showing agreement. Now, all of a
Oh,
sudden, they're
okay.
like, oh, I
Okay.
wanna buy this.
All right.
Okay, well, I'll write the contract.
Well,
You
you
send
can,
the
you can
contract.
do it right off the showing agreement because there's compensation included there. Okay?
Yeah, but you said if it turns into a sale to get that buyer broker agreement.
I don't know that I stand behind that.
You know, I had that, okay,
Okay? If you've got a showing agreement, you can sell them the house.
okay.
Okay? But you have to, let's get through the process, okay? So you have to find out what the compensation is, show the house. If they want to buy the house, then you have to get a compensation agreement with the other realtor first. Okay, then once you have the compensation agreement, you write the contract, send it over, or you may have the contract written, you're sending that to the buyer, you're getting the compensation agreement ironed out with the other person. You want to have the compensation agreement signed before you submit. Okay, because that way it's a valid compensation agreement.
So as a listing agent, though, you'd want to have that,
As a listing agent, if somebody is making an appointment to see your property, I fire them a text and say, this is the compensation we're offering.
but you should already have that buyer or the compensation agreement at the ready to be able to send out to the,
You can have it in your form
Yeah.
simplicity, already signed by you, and you just flip it out and email it to them so they can sign it and send it back to you. Because it's not signed by the seller. As a listing agent, it's the agreement between the broker and unless the seller's offering compensation, then the seller would sign it.
Yeah, so what you were saying was have the seller, the compensation of the seller is giving, ready to go before they come out, like send it to them?
Yeah, now let's not confuse terms.
Okay.
Okay, we're talking about the seller's broker to the buyer's broker. Compensation is from the seller's broker to the buyer's broker. You're using that modification, or you're using that compensation agreement, seller's broker to buyer's broker, and it's signed by who?
The buyer to sign it.
No,
No,
it's agent and agent. Agent and agent.
Seller's broker and the buyer's
And
broker.
he's gonna pay.
That's an agent to agent contract.
That's an agent to agent contract.
thank
It's
you.
broker to broker
There you
contract.
go. Thank you.
That's what that is. It has nothing to do with the buyer,
Now,
nothing
he's
to
the
do with the
one that's
seller.
using this
It's us.
excessive language. It's not.
And it should be called that.
Well, it is a contract between the broker, between the broker.
It is correct because which one of you actually has the right to collect the commission?
You do.
That's right. Thank you, sir. So it is broker to broker commission. Okay, so that's the contract that you would use, and if their broker signs it, or and you can sign it as an authorized signature.
Authorized associate, it calls it.
And so then that makes a contract for the commission between the two brokers. Okay,
It's an
and
extra
if
step
it's-
now.
if it's a
The
for
next
sale by
step-
owner, or if the seller's offering compensation, you can use the okay,
On the
but you want that,
Sellers
so
broker.
again,
So, yeah.
buyer broker agreement or showing agreement, show the property, find out what the compensation is. Get a compensation agreement, make the offer. Okay, that's those little slices are the only difference really in your process. After that, it's gonna be pretty much the same.
You got two pre-owned support contracts.
His lawyers read it.
Yes,
Well,
since
you
the
gotta have an
compensation,
agreement with everybody.
Yeah, you and them have to agree on what you're getting paid, and then you gotta make an agreement between the two parties that are selling and buying.
Right. Right. And I think the reason that they've inserted those in separate layers, and somebody said that's in the NAR presentation as to why they split it out. Is to make it very clear to
They're trying to
everybody,
prevent
who-
litigation.
well,
They're looking at the pool table from every angle.
yeah.
You wanna know who's
Lawyers
actually
out of
paid.
all of us.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's move forward. Okay, so then from then on out, you're gonna pretty much do what you always do. Repair agreement, all that kind of stuff. And the only thing I think that might be any different is if through the course of the negotiations, you're making adjustments to what the commission might be. And this has happened in the past. I had one where the seller said, okay, fine, we can't go to closing because we don't have the $4,700 to bring to closing. And so I got with the other agent and we decided to pony up, and he was a very nice guy. We ponied up $2,500 a piece and went to closing. And, you know, but when those changes are made, I don't know that we probably have to go in and use a modification to compensation agreement just to cap things off so that we have a complete paper trail about what's going on. That might be the only other difference. So that gets us through the process. I think if you go and you look at these forms, they are pretty much self-explanatory. The most complicated is the buyer broker agreement or the showing agreement. The compensation agreements are one page, pretty straightforward. And the modifications are one page, and they give you a series of things that you can change or modify. Kind of in the format that the Florida Association of Realtors has always done. What else?
What about vacant land? I guess you just need your buyer brokerage agreement, because a lot of vacant land people just go out to sale.
Well,
Same procedure.
yeah. But,
Yeah, are you showing it?
They're just most of the time they ask to just drive out by themselves. They don't want to waste your time according to them at the time.
well, a lot of the vacant land that I've seen, how do you know you're even on the right property? So I kind of, when I had a vacant land listing, I had to be able to delineate where it started and where it ended. So you see where my sign is, it went 100 feet this way and 100 feet this way. When you get to the road on the corner, that's the end of it.
Or give them a survey.
But yeah, you're trusting the dumb luck. They may be buying, they may be thinking they're buying all of this and they're only buying this. And do you know what the answer to that's gonna be? But she said.
She said, get a survey.
No. There was a survey on file. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, no, I do know that I've had to actually go out and paste things off so that I knew where the corner was, so that I could take somebody and show them where this corner was and where this corner was, and that it went all the way through to the next 16 or whatever. So, if you're working, well, you've got that. You've got lots of land.
That ain't going anywhere with it.
That's very specialized. Okay, any other questions? So we understand that there's two different buyer broker agreements. There's a showing agreement, buyer broker agreement. There's a modification that is good for both of those agreements. Okay, there is two different kinds of compensation agreements. There's one for seller to buyer's broker, and there's one from selling broker to buyer's broker. The difference. There are two modifications for those two agreements, one each. Okay, so there's a modification seller to buyer's broker, a modification seller's broker to buyer's broker. All good, right?
One question,
Yeah.
just for clarity. The pre-property touring agreement or the showing agreement, if you are showing people homes with that, they say they want to buy it. You still have to fill out the EBBA, or can you just move straight to? Because the EBBA, I guess that delineates the fact that the person is exclusively transacting with you versus these touring agreements just say, I can show you, but you can go with someone else. So
I think that's the difference.
So the process would still be, regardless of whether you have those touring agreements or showing agreements in place, the next phase is still execute an EBBA and then move towards negotiating and transacting and doing.
Yeah. I would always move toward an ABBA, the exclusive buyer broker agreement. When you're selling to that buyer the value of your expertise, you're not just opening doors for them.
Right.
You're advising them, and you have to enter into that relationship. You have to know something about their finances. What can they afford? You have to know something about their needs, how many bedrooms and all that kind of stuff. And then you want to show them properties that are appropriate for that. And long-term, it's gonna go a long way to getting them a better product.
Yeah, also in the property pre-touring agreement, it actually says in there, if you, let's see where to go. If you wish to work with the broker to purchase a property, broker may ask you to sign a separate agreement detailing the party's responsibilities during the sale.
Yeah.
So that kind of outlines that. I think it's a good CYA method right there. Here's what my job is.
I personally don't think that they should have muddied it with anything but the buyer broker agreement.
Right.
Somebody signs up with you, they should be exclusive to you, but they've opened that door. And somebody probably said, hey, what if they don't want to be exclusive? And then I guess I'd start with the UBVA and then go to the showing agreement if you had to,
Just push back.
But I
It gives them,
most of the buyers.
the opportunity to shop. Gives the buyer an opportunity to shop the broker, the showing, that's what the function, I think. In other words, they don't want to commit, they go to the showing and then later commit.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Fred. All right, that's an hour. Did you do it justice or do you want more?
I would love as much as you can give. But, yeah, I'll still.
I think that's all I got.
Yeah, that's like, let me ask you one last question. And if the buyer doesn't have money to pay your commission, they tell you that at your buyer consultation.
Right.
On the NAR CE course, whatever, or course, they said that that state housing initiative program and hometown heroes might be able to pay your commission. That's what she said.
Well, obviously,
They can pay closing
if
costs.
there are other sources of revenue that are gonna go into the transaction, as long as it's not violating the terms of those other sources of revenue, any of that money could potentially be diverted to your compensation.
I look at it the same way that if they need help with our commission, it's the same way if they need help with closing costs.
Yeah.
That house isn't for them, plain and
Part of
simple.
the closing cost.
That house isn't for them.
Or
If they need
if the
closing costs.
seller, if the seller's willing to pony up, they're gonna pay our compensation and they're gonna pay their closing costs. And with the inventory that we've got out there right now, that may be the case.
So if the buyer does, says no, though, they don't have the money to pay your commission, if in the event they found a house they like, is that somewhere, I haven't looked over the agreement, the buyer broker agreement, but is there somewhere in there that you would put no, that, or they put no?
It's the same thing as though if they need closing costs paid.
They can't afford this
It's
house.
no difference.
There's no
If they can't afford to
So
pay
it's a no
you,
regardless.
if they can't afford to pay you and they need their closing costs paid, it's the same thing.
No, it's not. No, it's negotiate with the seller to get it paid.
Yeah, and if the seller's unwilling to pay closing costs or the seller's unwilling to pay your commission, it's no difference.
Now
That house isn't there.
here's my thing. If you got the buyer from Zillow and you're all, and you're only getting 50% of the commission anyway. What are you willing to accept for the work that you did with that buyer? It may be less.
But you could put a contingent on if the seller is willing to pay me, then you can still work with them and show them, but. it's
You can
a
still
risk.
work with them anyway.
It's the same thing if they need closing costs. What's the difference?
Don't ever
Don't
turn down
confuse the
buyer
idea of-
because they don't have money.
Don't confuse the idea of, it's personal because our commission, right? We think of it personal. It's no different than if they can't afford closing costs. It's the same thing. One of them affects our paycheck. Well, actually, both of them do. If they need
Yeah.
closing costs and the seller's not willing to do it, we're not getting paid anyway.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So
It's just an extra little bucket. If the seller is not paying it and they don't have the money, that house isn't.
The
for them.
reason that we've done this for 106 years and the seller has paid our commission on the buyer's side was because guess who had the money?
They get a check. They sell their house.
The seller has equity.
They're getting the money. That's why they paid it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it was practical. Okay, and I thought it interesting in one of these documents, they put it in there. I think it was in the listing agreement or something, but they put it in there that even though the seller is paying the buyer's broker's commission, the buyer's broker is working for the buyer. And I think that was on the listing agreement.
Does that have any bearing on rental showings?
I don't think so.
In the class, she said that rentals are not part of this, where you have to do the showing, just look for each one. She said rentals is not included.
Yeah, they'd never get another rental shown.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's already cumbersome to begin with and pays, it's not worth it, to be honest.
So getting back to what you were saying though about these incentives, it might be a good idea for you to have for your buyer to have a conversation about those incentives, whether they qualify and whether those funds could be used towards the commission
In
as opposed to, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, you're right.
You just have to be more prepared
Yeah.
at every aspect.
And you have to be able to talk about your value, just like you do in a listing presentation. You're gonna have to have a buyer's presentation, okay? And that's when they're gonna be willing to sign up to pay you commission, because you're gonna hold their hand all the way through the process and make sure they get what they want. And it's not a process that they can learn on the first transaction. Imagine you know, what you had to go through on your first transaction to learn the process. You know, so, it's gonna be necessary. This is the way we've got to do it. This is what we've got handed. I think that a year from now, it may be very different.
Also with the builder, it's wise to call them in advance to find out what they're paying for commission. So you can write that buyer broker agreement accordingly if it's like they're giving 4.5%.
And again, you know, if that's the thing that your buyer decides to go through with, do the modification of the buyer broker agreement, put what the builder's paying, then
And
take
just
them
add
in,
it on.
then take them in and get them to sign the contract.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I
It's
have a
not
question.
threshold anymore.
Right, can we have a range?
I'm sorry. Hello?
I missed some of the Zoom part due to disconnection. I have two questions. One of them is, if I get the EBBA signed, do I need to sign the showing agreement also?
No. You have you have buyer broker agreement signed, that's all you need. If you have the showing agreement signed, that's all you need, as long as the house that you're showing on the showing agreement is the one they're making an offer on. So there's
Okay.
compensation on the showing agreement.
I missed the listing agreement part. Let me ask you, let's say I'm the listing agent and I get the listing agreement with the seller and I said, okay, 6% is my commission and $350 for brokerage fee, right?
Right.
And then if I get a buyer, if the seller says they are not going to pay buyer's compensation, how am I going to proceed? Am I going to, as a brokerage, am I going to say the buyer agent, we are compensating you as a brokerage? Am I going to share
So
my
you're
commission?
getting 6% from the seller, and they're paying you the whole 6%, and they're not paying buyer's compensation?
Yes, in that case, how am I going to proceed? What am I going to send them if they request the compensation information
Jordan, you
from
can
me?
take this one.
That's all you do.
Ask your buyer for free, go for broke.
No, I would in my listing presentation, I would tell the seller, look, it's not on you,
Wow.
the compensation going to the buyer's broker is coming out of my 6% that you've already agreed to pay me. Okay, so we're gonna put that down here as 3% paid from buyers, from broker to buyer's broker. Is that, you know, because it's not costing me, right? So that's coming out of my pocket, not yours. Right? And if you get both sides, you still get the 6%. That's the key.
Yeah, but I have another question.
Oh, no.
Aura. For the for new construction, you were saying like if they were offering 5% or 4% and we have it, our buyer is signed for 3%. We have to make the buyer sign a modification for 5% or have the builder sign the compensation disclosure.
The original contract's between you and the buyer. Buyer
But-
broker agreement or the showing agreement are between you and the buyer.
Okay,
Any modification to that agreement would be signed by you and the buyer.
okay, but then if I am the buyer, like, if a realtor comes to me and say, okay, now you have to sign these, we had it for 3%, but now you have to modify it for 5%. Why? I mean, I'm just saying, like, if
Well, the
I'm the
builder's
buyer, how do
offering
we handle that
5%, and you know, I give lavish, closing gifts to people that buy new construction. If you're cutting me out of the 5% that they're offering to pay me, how am I gonna be able to provide you with a lavish closing gift?
Why would you
Yeah,
not?
'cause I was thinking,
Why would you
I
not want me to make more
I was
money? I did a
thinking-
good job. Why would you not want me to pay more money?
I was thinking
Maybe
if
that
I was
much.
the buyer,
I think
if
once
I
you
was the
explain
buyer,
it,
like, it is a contract that I'm signing, that I'm paying for 5% to you. You know, so it's like, just how to handle that conversation, like, no, now you have to do 5 because the
Well,
builders.
with the new construction, it's gonna show up in the new construction
Liable
contract
for
too.
that 5.
They're gonna see it in the new construction contract, once they get that document that says that the sellers, that the builder is paying that 5%.
Yeah, and you may want to have, you know, some of that language, you know, where you can open up some of the stuff that I put in that document and show on there where it says that if the buyer broker agreement says 3% and you're offered more than 3%, you can't collect the balance. You know, that the buyer broker agreement would, and so you have to do a modification on the buyer broker agreement in order for you to get paid.
It should be a part of your buyer's consult.
Yeah.
Or it
The
even
buyer
gets
should
to that
understand,
point.
you know.
And it specifically states that you get paid, like the buyer is only gonna pay you less what the seller's paying you. And
And
so
as long as you're talking about compensation, if you're telling them, hey, look, if the seller pays me 2%, you know, I'm gonna let you skate on the other 1%. It's only fair if I can get more, you gotta sign for me to get more. You know, because all of that's gonna come into play when you're talking to those folks. Right? I mean, I take your word for it. No more about signs. Anybody else? Anybody had any great success lately? Well, thank you all for being here. It's been a really great crowd and you guys have been great as far as asking questions and kind of understanding this. So does everybody feel confident that they could get through the buyer process and get the proper documents signed and move forward? Okay, don't ignore other training. If you see other things, I sent out a webinar from Andrew in Orlando, who's an attorney. He was really great. I had a chance to talk to him a couple of times down in Orlando for the Florida 21. Next year, by the way, they're going to have it in Orlando again, but it's going to be Elevate 21, and they're inviting the whole Southeast. That'll be fun. Be a lot of folks.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Like for preferred terms and conditions on your buyer brokerage agreement, could you put maybe Shadifa's only to show me homes where the listing office or the listing agent is able to compensate me for my commission? If not, I will not be able to assist.
Well, I don't understand why you want to limit.
It's just a question. Yeah, I just was asking.
I don't know the answer to that.
a lot of lawyers are stating the fact that if you're using additional provisions on contracts, you're like doing practicing law,
Practice law.
unauthorized law, and so it can fall as like a
Well,
no.
the caveat to that is this is between you and the buyer, and you have privity of contract, and that's a legal term. A lot of people don't understand privity. But privity means that you're acting on your own behalf. Okay, so you can act on your own behalf without a lawyer, and you can write another term and condition into that contract because it's between, you are a principal in that contract. What he's talking about is when you get into writing the actual contract between buyer and seller, and you're writing in other terms and conditions.
No, I didn't.
You want to keep it really stupid, simple.
Yeah, I meant.
Otherwise, you may get into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I could do that on buyer brokerage agreement.
You can't write a contract between two other parties, but a contract between you and I, we can write, even though we're not attorneys.
So you're saying if you put that in the buyer broker agreement and they can't afford commission. So you be able to, if you've gone, they want to see 5 houses and 3 of those 5 houses don't offer compensation, then you can say in there that they don't want to see them. Is that what you're saying?
Is if they're
Or that
not,
those properties can be eliminated?
yeah, basically, because what are you gonna do? Why are you gonna go show it to them if there's no way
Right.
that?
Well,
that would-
No,
That's-
See, I go back to the
you
same
can change
thing.
the seller's mind though too, so
Yeah,
that's why.
I go back to the same thing with closing costs.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah,
We're overcomplicating it.
Yeah,
It's
if you're gonna,
overcomplicated.
if you're gonna make an offer and ask for closing costs because your seller, or because your buyer doesn't have enough money to close, you're gonna go there and ask for closing costs and commission. You're just
What's the
gonna ask for that much more.
Go
Okay,
down to Chevrolet.
Even if you
test drive
talk to the
Stingray.
agent and the agent says
Tell,
no.
tell the car guy.
Well,
you
the same
want
thing is
to
they're not
buy it,
offering
see if he
closing
wants to
costs.
take it home.
No
Wait,
different.
I didn't hear you continue. I'm sorry.
Go down to Chevrolet, test drive a new Stingray. Tell the guy that you test drive it with, I don't have the money to buy it, see if he lets you take it home.
as long as you're willing to pay 13% interest, they'll let anybody take it. All right, all done? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop my share. I'm going to,